Right then, I've covered all reports linking Saudi Arabia, Dubai, Apple, Amazon, Harrison Blitzer, Sir Jim Ratcliffe, all prospective new owners of Manchester United. Today's video will focus specifically on Qatar. Following reports that Qatar Sports Investment are interested in buying a Premier League club, I'm going to run through the story, explain the links to Manchester United, because of course the Glazers have been spotted twice in Qatar in the last month. I'll run through all the ins and outs of it and the complications behind any potential Qatari ownership of Man United. Please, if you are new, subscribe to the channel. I cover all of the news relating to Man United's new owners, and I will do until the Glazers are gone. But make sure you drop a like on the video too. Let me run through the story for you. Now, this story started, well, it's this week really, when reports broke that PSG's Qatari owners, were looking to invest in a Premier League club. And reports broke that they met with Daniel Levy at Spurs. And Manchester United have subsequently been named as another club that they would potentially be interested in. Now, all of this is speculative, is what I would call it at this stage, but I'm just bringing you the update so you know what's going on. This is coming from Bloomberg Business, saying that Manchester United, Liverpool or Spurs may all be targets for a Qatari buyout. Now, let's read the article together. United, Liverpool or Spurs are among England's top Premier League clubs being targeted by Qatar. He held conversations with Daniel Levy, which we've just discussed there. The interesting part down there is that a spokesperson for Qatari Sports Investment declined to comment. Spurs denied the meeting. United declined to comment. Liverpool stepped away from it. Everybody kind of staying in the shadows and not really speaking about it. Further detail in terms of this deal, QSI has decided to consider at least one investment in the Premier League after the World Cup. Any potential deal, either an outright takeover or a minority stake, and that's the big alarm bells for all United fans, and that's what I'm going to cover in this video, would further cement Qatar's strategy of investing in sports assets. Now, we know full well that when it comes to Qatar, there's a little bit more to the story when it comes to Manchester United. Abraham Glazer has been there twice, and this is when Adam Leventhal from The Athletic managed to meet him outside one of the stadiums after a game at the World Cup and asked him about what's going on with Manchester United's new ownership.
Can I just ask you how your experience has been here?
It's been great. Great game today, great game yesterday, and looking forward to the final.
Can you give me an update of where you stand with the sale of Manchester United?
It's not necessarily a sale, it's a process, and we're going forward with the process, so we'll see what happens.
How many interested parties have you had so far?
I'm here to really watch the World Cup, and I appreciate your interest.
Just one little update just to give us a taste of how it's progressing.
That's the update. The update is the process, and the process is proceeding. So,
what's the timetable on it?
Once again, I'm here to enjoy the World Cup, but I appreciate your questions.
Here to enjoy the World Cup, my arse. We know full well that Abraham Glazer was there to hold talks with potential investors in Qatar. That's come out from David Ornstein. And of course, he was back in Qatar less than a couple of weeks later. Oh yeah, I'm just here to watch football. No, you're not, mate. You're there to look at potential new owners. And now, since this story is broken that Qatar are looking to go to Premier League investment, they've held conversations with Spurs about something and potential deal, and that they're looking at Liverpool as well. It gives credence to this idea, and as I said, the fact that Abraham Glazer has been in Qatar twice, to the idea that Qatar could be prospective new owners of Manchester United. Now, we know full well that they have spent big on the World Cup. And to see this sort of interest coming after the World Cup, it shouldn't come as too much of a surprise to anybody, really. But there are massive complications when it comes to a potential Qatari ownership of Manchester United. First things first, to understand exactly what it is. The Qatar Sports Investment is the sports investment arm of the Qatar Investment Authority. In the same way that I think it's the PIF in Saudi Arabia, it's their way of using the money that they've made from oil to expand their economies, so they're not as reliant on oil. And so it's called sports washing. We know exactly what it's called. And we know exactly who Qatar Sports Investment are involved with mainly. Nasser Al-Khelaifi, you know exactly who he is. He's the chairman of PSG. I don't need to tell you exactly what's happened at PSG over the last few years and the money that they have spent. I think they've spent over 1.3 billion on new signings since 2011. I'll tell you what, United aren't that short of that number. But that's not the only club that PSG's owners, Qatari Sports Investment, own. They also own, I believe, around about 20% of Braga. And it's that multi-club model that has become fashionable. Not fashionable, but it's kind of taken over football. You can see here the City Group. They own 10 clubs in 10 countries. Red Bull, 9 clubs in 6 countries. Kroenke, who are the owners of Arsenal, 6 clubs in 2 countries. Fenway Sports owns Liverpool currently, 4 clubs in 2 countries. Harris and Blitzer, who I've discussed here on this channel. Multi-club ownership is seen as it's not really the new thing, but it's happening a lot more. And for Qatar, now that they've spent what? No, that's Avram Glazer. Now that they've spent 200 billion, not million, billion on the World Cup. This idea of expanding their multi-club model, given that they've already got 2 in there with Braga and PSG, and maybe they could add another one in. But there's complications behind that. And these are the complications. Rules there. The UEFA's rules, I'll read it out to you. UEFA's integrity rules state that no 2 clubs or more participating in a UEFA competition may be directly or indirectly controlled by the same entity or managed by the same person. Now, you might just think, okay, well, that just completely rules out PSG from full ownership of Manchester United. And we'll get into that point in a little bit there. But it's written here as well, which is a very good point. Leipzig and Salzburg, both under the Red Bull umbrella, both participate in the Champions League because UEFA ruled that no individual or legal entity had a deciding influence over more than one club, showing that there are ways around this rule if the structure and the governance are set up correctly. Now, Martin Ziegler, who writes for The Times, I think is their chief sports reporter, he's actually said, look, Qatar Sports Investment have ambitious plans, but are not looking to invest in United or Liverpool at the moment. Any Premier League investment would be a minority stake, as there are no plans to sell PSG. And now that obviously could be part of what goes to happen. Qatar Sports Investment decide to sell PSG. They then decide to reinvest in the Premier League where the big money is. Martin Ziegler is suggesting that is not the case. And that's where we get the conversation around the complications around a minority stake. Because we know full well what was written inside the strategic investment, strategic alternatives, whatever the fuck the Glazers called it. The Glazers for years have been trying to find minority investment in Manchester United. They've been trying to find somebody who's willing to cough up the billions that are required for the investment, the infrastructure, the club, the new signings, what's coming next. United, we need a lot of money to get to where City now unfortunately are. And that's the dream situation for the Glazers. So to hear Martin Ziegler from The Times saying that Qatar have no intention of selling PSG and anything would be a minority stake, that's where these conversations with Spurs kind of make sense. Because I think Spurs would be fine, Daniel Levy would be fine in taking a minority investment, maintaining ownership, and just having Qatar as a part owner of the club in the same way that they only own 20% of Braga. That is the opposite of what we all want. That is dangerous. For United fans, this has to be the point where the Glazers finally leave the club. So any idea of Qatar has to be met with major concern. Because if they don't sell PSG, and I imagine, look, in the same way, that's what this article, which I think correctly explains, in the same way that they managed to get around the UEFA's rules with Red Bull, Leipzig and Salzburg, and both of them competing in the same competitions. I imagine they'd probably be able to do the same thing with United and PSG somehow, with the right structure and the right governance. But this is not a time where we should be talking about minority stakes. And the fact there, as I said, that we've got proof that Avram Glazer was in Qatar not once, but twice over the last month, it goes to show something is going on there. And that's why this story is interesting, why we have to have a discussion about it, but why we all should have major concerns about the idea that the Glazers may well be able to find something with Qatar that means that they only have to sell off a minority and that they can retain ownership. That's dangerous. That's terrifying. That's the worst case scenario from this. But that's it all covered in up to this point. I hope you've learned something, a thing or two in this video. If you have, make sure you do subscribe and become part of the community. But yeah, this Qatari one, because of their investment in PSG, it complicates any potential ownership of United and any minority stake. It's not what we want as fans. It's not what we want.